Watch DJ get the push here.
There,
Get him. Triple up. Nice. He was in his face all day. Career day for the Lions for DJ. My fellow Lions fans, Detroit is off to their best start in franchise history. And we're now post-Thanksgiving. Things are taking shape in the NFL, and teams are making their push towards the playoffs. Unfortunately, the Lions have been devastated by injuries, especially defensively. They'll require reinforcements and some clever coaching to maintain their position on top of the NFC. Welcome back to the channel. I am your host, Johnny Gaz. Thank you for returning for another video. This video will get back into my state of the Lions. We'll take a look at this current injury situation and how the Lions will adjust. We'll look at the strengths and weaknesses of this roster by looking at the depth chart as it stands currently. And we'll take a look at what's ahead for these Detroit Lions as they make their push towards the organization's first Super Bowl. Before we dive into the state of the Lions, make sure to hit that like button. It's the best free way to help out the channel. I'd also love it if you consider subscribing. We are now on the road to 3,000 thanks to you guys. And if we hit that notify bell, you won't miss any future videos. I do have a membership option available. That's where I do all my live game play-by-plays, my tier list, my new ladder series, a ton of other fun stuff. But there's always free content here for you all the time. Make sure to comment down below. What do you think of the Lions' current injury situation, and what can they do to recover? Do you like the players that they've brought in? Let me know in those comments down below. Let's get into today's topic. Let's first quickly recap where I left off in my last State of the Lions, which ended on the bye week. Coming out of the bye week, the Lions faced the Dallas Cowboys and had a convincing win in Jerry World, 47-9. Unfortunately, that was the contest where Aiden Hutchinson suffered the broken leg, and that was really the first injury in a slew of injuries that have put the Lions in their current position. Fortunately, the Lions were in the midst of their current 10-game winning streak, their best since 1934. The Lions currently stand at 11-1 and are on top of the NFC. They're off to their best start in franchise history. The Lions' latest victory, of course, coming on Thanksgiving Day, closely eking out the victory 23-20 over the Chicago Bears. This one highlighted by the end-of-game execution by Chicago and their former head coach, Matt Eberflus. The Lions will now take on another division opponent, the Green Bay Packers, on Thursday night at home, December 5th, looking to maintain their position there in the NFC North. The Lions will come out of Week 13 boasting potentially the best offense in all of the NFL. They do lead the NFL in scoring at 31.9 points per game. Their defense is no slouch. Marked improvement from seasons past with this revamped secondary and added talent all over the place. They actually rank fourth in defensive scoring at 16.9 points per game. The Lions have been devastated by injuries, and at this point, they are now bringing in reinforcements from other teams' practice squads. Let's go through their current injury situation, take a look at the depth chart, and talk about how they can move forward. This injury situation for the Lions is so severe that it's truly even hard to keep up at this point, so we may have to look at this on several different levels. Let's first take a look at the immediate future for the Lions and those guys that are currently dealing with injuries that may return soon. I think we have to start on the offensive side of the football with Taylor Decker, who was dealing with a knee issue. He did not play in the Thanksgiving Day game, and the word out of the organization currently is that he is day-to-day and is questionable still for the Thursday night matchup against Green Bay, but of course is expected to return and get back to full health and bring this offensive line back to full strength. They have the defensive side of the football. Levi Onwuzurike and Josh Paschal. Levi dealing with a hamstring, Paschal the knee. Both are considered day-to-day. Both look a little bit more probable for the matchup against Green Bay on Thursday. Cornerback Emmanuel Mosley, who was scheduled to return in full on Thanksgiving, did have something pop up pregame and did not play. He does not have a specified injury, but is expected to play against Green Bay on Thursday. And the more newer long-term injuries suffered by the Lions here. Malcolm Rodriguez, the linebacker, has the knee. Unfortunately, has suffered a torn ACL. He was placed on season-ending injured reserve. And then the newest addition to injured reserve, Mekhi Wingo, the defensive lineman, also suffered a knee injury. He was placed on IR and will also be out for the season. Now let's take a look at the current depth chart, and it's almost comical to see all the red-marked on here. So let's go through the current list of players that the Lions have on injured reserve. A little shorter here on the offense, as you see Khalif Raymond, the wide receiver, as well as Antoine Green. And then we had offensive linemen on the list, Netane Moody and Connor Galvin. But let's flip it over to the defense. Okay, so here is the Lions depth chart on defense. A lot to take in, a lot of red marks on this depth chart. Let's first take a look at the guys that are on injured reserve. And we know, of course, the highlight to this, the Lions Defensive Player of the Year candidate, the heart and soul, Aiden Hutchinson. He is expected to potentially return before the end of this season on a Super Bowl run. Initial indications were if the Lions are able to get to a Super Bowl, there are chances he could come back. We were starting to see rehab video. We were starting to see video of him walking around Ford Field and the Lions Allen Park training facility. So all indications are he is ahead of schedule on this rehab. I'm not going to try and predict or think he's going to come back prior to that designation, but that is where it currently stands for Aiden Hutchinson. Past that, we have guys like Kyle Pecco, Nate Lynn, Mekhi Wingo, David Bada, all defensive linemen on current injured reserve along with Aiden Hutchinson. I forgot to mention John Kaminsky, the other right end as well. You also have linebackers Derek Barnes, Alex Anzalone, Jalen Reeves-Maben, 3 quality linebackers, 2 starters, and 1 heavily involved in your depth piece as well as special teams, all on injured reserve. Also now adding to the list, Malcolm Rodriguez, as he is the latest addition to the linebacking crew to be added to injured reserve. Doesn't skip the secondary also, as you have cornerback Enos Rakestraw, their second-round draft pick, as well as Ife Melifonwu, their safety, who really shined at the end of last season, really hasn't been able to play all year, also on injured reserve. We talked about the guys that are currently questionable or who were out last week. We also have to mention Carlton Davis, who currently is suffering a knee injury on top of the cast that he has on his broken thumb. He is currently considered day-to-day and is questionable for the game against the Packers. And this is what we know moving forward for this Lions depth chart. Malcolm Rodriguez, Mekhi Wingo, Marcus Davenport, guys like Michael Badgley, Antoine Green, Connor Galvin, Nate Lynn, Kyle Pecco, Netane Moody, they will all be out for the entirety of this season and will be on IR with no chance to return. We talked about Aiden Hutchinson's status on his possible return for a Super Bowl. We have some other players that could potentially make it back before the end of the season. Let's start with Alex Anzalone, who had the broken forearm. The initial diagnosis was 6 to 8 weeks. Right now, it looks like his rehab is going well, and his earliest possible return could be December 30th against the 49ers. Again, all of these players, I will keep you posted on their actual status. Derek Barnes, the linebacker, a little less information. We do know he has the torn PCL and MCL. We're not exactly sure what the length of that injury will be or when his designated return could be, but we do know that the Lions can activate his clock for return at any time. They have not released a ton of information outside of we know that Derek Barnes has been training at the Allen Park facility along with Aiden Hutchinson. The other linebacker, Jalen Reeves-Maben, is a little bit closer to a return. He had the neck injury, and he could be activated as soon as this Thursday night game against Green Bay on December 5th. We really haven't heard a bunch of that this week in regards to his status, so we'll keep our ears to the ground on that one. But that return should be sooner than later. Khalif Raymond is dealing with a foot injury. Not anything super serious, but something that will keep him out for an extended period of time. However, he is expected back before the playoffs. He could return as early as December 30th against the 49ers. A little less information on Enos Rakestraw and his current hamstring injury. He could come back as early as December 2nd against the Bears. We talked about all 3 current standing. Josh Pascal with his knee injury. We also have Levi Onwuzurike in the hamstring and Carlton Davis in his knee. They are all considered day-to-day and questionable for the matchup on Thursday night against Green Bay. Another interesting one is John Kaminsky. He had the torn MCL. And they haven't said much on his return, but at this point, he can come back at any time. The latest from Dan Campbell is that he is still a ways out, but just didn't get a lot of information on that. Of course, that would be a welcome addition back to that defensive line. Let's talk about some of the other additions and roster moves the Lions have made to supplement this defense moving forward. The Lions were quick to respond this week as they added several pieces to their defensive roster to hopefully maintain this pace moving forward. Now, these are guys that are coming from practice squads, guys that are looking to add themselves onto a winner. We're not talking about ultimate difference makers, but guys that you're hoping to get a flash out of. And that's sort of a theme of the players that we're going to go through here. Former Pro Bowlers, players that have flashed in seasons past, and even guys that have made small differences this year. They started by adding linebacker Quan Alexander from the Denver Broncos practice squad. He's formerly with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but also has some familiarity with the coaching staff from his time in New Orleans. He is a former Pro Bowler and has flashed even this season here. So the Lions are hoping to add him and get a little depth in their linebacker room. The Lions also signed defensive lineman Jonah Williams from the LA Rams. There's some familiarity with the Lions organization as well, as that was Brad Holmes' last year with the Rams in 2020 when Jonah Williams was brought in. Williams has spent time with both the Rams and the Minnesota Vikings, so he is familiar with the Lions organization. He was a full-time starter with the Rams as late as 2023 and will again be brought in to bolster the Lions' defensive line room. Lions also added another defensive lineman, Miles Adams from the Seattle Seahawks. Now, he spent his last 4 seasons there and actually had a very good game against the Lions in Week 4. He plays very similar to, I'd say, the smaller edges that the Lions have on their team, but should be a good addition again as well to bolster their defensive line. Prior to all these moves, the Lions had already brought in a pair of linebackers, Ezekiel Turner and David Long, as well as safety Kayvon Merriweather, who was added to the Lions practice squad. But maybe in the most surprising move, the Lions also signed safety Jamal Adams, former Pro Bowler and All-Pro from the Seattle Seahawks. This will certainly bolster the Lions safety room. And what we're thinking here is it may be in an effort to move Brian Branch back to slot corner and help the cornerback room, as well as add safety depth. Obviously, with the experience and know-how from Jamal Adams, it will be a welcome addition to the Lions secondary. So many additions, so many moves made here in this past week, on top of what they've done the past several weeks to make up for all these guys that have been added to injured reserve, all the questionable and outs from last week. The Lions are in a tough spot defensively. Through all these injuries, the Lions have continued to win. In past seasons, they leaned on their dominant offense. And that continues to be the case here in 2024. And I think the Lions will have to do so throughout the remainder of this season if they're going to continue on this historic pace. Again, they've won 10 in a row. They are now 11-1 and on top of the NFC, but they are being pressured from teams behind them, the Minnesota Vikings, Green Bay Packers, and of course the Philadelphia Eagles. The Lions will have to continue to win to stay on top of the NFC. It'll be very important that they get a first-round bye, especially considering all of these injuries. They have a 10-day break after their upcoming Thursday night game against the Green Bay Packers before they square off in a huge matchup against the Buffalo Bills at Ford Field. But the Lions' defense and these injuries are concerning. The strength of this team is still its offense, and they will have to carry this team moving forward. Jared Goff, the running back duo, their offensive line, all of the weapons they have through their tight end room, their wide receivers are going to have to step up. The points per game average has come down a little bit this past several weeks. They will have to get back into the routine of scoring points. They're going to have to carry this defense as they have been carried by this defense over the past several weeks. The Lions' biggest current weakness due to these injuries on defense is on the linebacking crew and in the cornerback room. I think right now you're asking a lot of Jack Campbell. You're without Alex Anzalone. You're now without Malcolm Rodriguez, Derek Barnes, Jalen Reeves-Maybin. You're asking a lot of practice squad players and depth pieces to step into those roles and maintain the linebacker positioning and defensive prowess. That is going to be very difficult for them moving forward. You hope the addition of Quan Alexander will help, but I don't know if it's ultimately the difference maker. So right now, the current weakness on the Lions defense is that linebacking crew. Secondly, their cornerback room. We've seen the Lions struggle in their depth pieces defending the pass. Now, when their 2 starting cornerbacks, Terrion Arnold and Carlton Davis, are healthy, they have shown that they have made marked improvement over past seasons here in coverage, in quarterback rating, so on and so forth. But if both those players are out, or if one of those players are out, their depth pieces have just not been enough to hold in there, and they have given up huge chunk plays at the cornerback position. So the addition of Jamal Adams, reshifting their safety room to help with the cornerbacks may help with that, That's going to be something the Lions will be concerned with moving forward. Even through all these injuries, the Lions carry some big strengths on defense. And I think their biggest strength right now currently is the interior of their defensive line. Aleem McNeil and DJ Reader are playing fantastic football right now. As a matter of fact, DJ Reader had his best game as a Lion on Thanksgiving Day. He was all over the place. His pressure rate, he was even getting to the quarterback and producing sacks. Him along with Aleem McNeil are potentially the best defensive lineman duo in all of the NFL, and they will need to continue to be so for the Lions to continue this pace here in 2024. On top of that, the Lions have a fantastic pair of safeties. Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch, both huge playmakers in two different ways. Brian Branch is sort of your come-up safety. Along with now the addition of Jamal Adams, they play a very similar style. So it'll be interesting to see how Aaron Glenn deploys both of those players, along with Kirby Joseph, who is sort of your free safety, your ball hawk, and has proven he can get his hands on the ball each and every week. So with your safety room, your interior defensive linemen, I think you still have two great groups there that can play off each other and can carry this defense moving forward. In a big picture sense, this is all about coaching and culture. The Lions and Dan Campbell are not going to feel bad for themselves in all of these mounting injuries. I believe they've made the necessary moves to supplement their defense and get by in this time of need. It is going to be a struggle. They have huge games against Green Bay and then the next week against Buffalo. This will be the Lions' biggest test so far in 2024. But the Lions are on a mission. They have all the grit in the world, and I believe they will get the flashes of these players that they need to maintain their defense to move this thing forward towards a Super Bowl in 2024. What do you guys think? Let me know down in the comments. Do you like the current state of the Lions? Can they recover from all of these injuries defensively? Let me know what you think. Thank you guys so much for all your time. Make sure to slap that like button if you dig the vibe here at Johnny Gas Sports. It's the best free way to help out the channel. I'd love it if you consider subscribing. We're on the road to 3,000 now, thanks to you guys. And if you hit the notify bell, you won't miss any future videos. If you hit the little blue join button, I'll walk you through how you can become a part of the family. I do all my live game play-by-play reactions, my tier list, my new ladder series, a ton of other fun stuff for you there, but there's always free content here for you all the time. More than anything else, take care of yourself and your mental health. That is the most important thing, and I want to make sure you come back and see me on future videos. Have a fantastic week ahead. Go Lions.